All right, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. You are live and direct with your Akazaki Yahoo, giving all praises, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahuwah Bahashem, Yahushua HaMashiach, and to the 12 tribes of Israel who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I say Shalom, Wa, Baruchim. That is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day that the Most High brings us back together and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High Power, under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone, with our enemies under our feet. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
I'm joined this afternoon by my most esteemed Akinanaya. Shabbat Shalom, Aki.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, Aki. Shabbaton Yasharal. Call Halal Yahweh, Bahashem HaMashiach, Yahweh Shah, Wa Malak, Barakatah.
Hallelujah. Happy Sabbath, everyone. All praises to Yahweh in the name of his beloved son, Yahweh Shah, the Messiah and King. Bless you. Hallelujah. Another Sabbath Yom. We are back again. Praises to the Abba for another Sabbath Yom. Pray you all have rested, gotten some rest, and are ready to get into some good information. And pray you've had a joyous Sabbath thus far, and looking forward to continuing with the joy of the Sabbath. And we're going to get into a couple of videos from our good brothers over at Black Journals. And let's get to it. Let's get to it. All right, here we go. All right, the name of this first video, this is again from Black Journals. It's called the Aeta. The Aeta. This is a Black Asian tribe that history almost erased. So I'm interested in this. I wonder if they're Israelites. I wonder if where they came from and who they with and what they're about. So let's check it out.
In a trip to the Philippines, I visited the Aetas, which is one of the many groups of Africans that migrated to many parts of Asia some 20,000 to 70,000 years ago. The Aetas are one of the Negrito tribes of the Philippines. They're called Negritos, which literally translates to little Negro or little black person. Now, some of the Negritos are what you would call pure Negritos.
I am pure-blooded Aeta.
While some are mixed with half Negrito, half Filipino.
It's like me. I am half, and then I have a husband who's a Filipino.
Deep in the Philippine mountains, hidden from civilization for thousands of years, lives a group of people whose presence stretches back to the dawn of time itself. The Aeta, also called Agta, are the first black people to live in the remote mountains of Luzon in the Philippines, way before the Malays and Asians even came to the islands. They are a black tribe whose culture, traditions, and way of life survived through centuries of change and migration. As one of the oldest and rarest black indigenous groups in Asia, their distinct appearance sets them apart, with dark skin, curly hair, and a stature that shows their African ancestry. But even though they've been here for so long, their story is rarely told, and thus often misunderstood. Today, let's explore the captivating story of the Aeta people, the original black tribe in the Philippines that still exists to this day. Give this video a like to show your support, subscribe for more insightful discussions, and let us begin. Let's start by addressing the main topic, the Aeta's ancestry. Some people would argue that the Aetas are a whole different race that did not come from Africa. After all, many people only know them to have come from the ancient Aborigines of Australia. However, scientists have uncovered something remarkable. Contrary to popular belief, their origins may be more connected to Africa than initially thought.
A lock of hair found 90 years ago in the goldfields of Western Australia has turned out to be DNA gold for scientists. It's providing key evidence about how the first humans colonised the planet 70,000 years ago. Using the hair, scientists have mapped the DNA history of Aboriginal Australians and found they're the direct descendants of the first modern humans to leave Africa.
The reality is, we all came out of Africa, from a small homogeneous group who decided to migrate in search of better resources and opportunities. DNA evidence suggests that early humans migrated from Northeast Africa around 50,000 to 60,000 years ago. These early humans traveled across various continents, adapting to different environments and conditions. On their journey through Europe, Asia, and Australia, their DNA was spread. Over time, as this group settled and migration slowed, variations in physical traits like skin color and hair texture arose due to environmental adaptations. All of this leads us to the diversity we see in humans today. Many of us have certainly changed a lot, but can you believe that the Etas have managed to preserve their identity despite facing numerous challenges throughout the years? Many Europeans today are no longer Black, and the same is true for many parts of Asia and Australia. But the Etas, they still resemble the original Etas. Despite centuries of colonization and modernization, the Etas have managed to preserve their cultural identity through...
Yeah, these don't look like Israelites. These look like some Asian people. They look like the people that they either came from or the people that they resemble the people there. They just have a darker hue. But yeah, they call them little Negroes. I was like, wait a minute, maybe that's. But now I'm looking at it like, it's like Asian people to me, even though they, even though they 10. But yeah, let's continue here.
Through their traditional way of life, including their spiritual beliefs, community structures, and environmental practices. Despite modern challenges, they continue to maintain their unique culture while adapting to new circumstances. The question is, how are they doing this? The answer is simple. Although this Black tribe is small in number, they are incredibly strong, resourceful, and resilient. Their remote mountain and forest homes have also helped them protect their way of life. They have gone through a lot and are still standing. During Spanish colonial rule, the Aetas were referred to as Negritos. They are made up of about 25 different ethno-linguistic groups spread across the Philippines, with a total population of around 15,000. In the northern parts of the Philippines, some Eta groups were called Pugo by natives. This term referred to people with darker skin and also meant goblin or forest spirit. That is because the Etas have lived as forest dwellers, hunters, and gatherers for thousands of years. While the majority of Filipinos were eventually conquered by white colonizers, such as the Spanish and the Americans, the Etas were able to escape such a fate. Now, there are a few reasons why the Etas avoided being fully conquered. They lived in hard-to-reach mountainous areas and thick forests, which made it tough for outsiders to get to them. Their way of life was also mobile, so they could move around to stay away from danger. The Etas also knew their land well, which helped them dodge conflicts. Sometimes they would also make deals with other groups or colonizers to stay safe. For instance, Miguel López de Legazpi, a Spanish navigator and governor general, recorded that several Aetas were sold into slavery in Borneo and China during the 1500s as a result of internal warfare within the tribe, disarray, and as a strategy for repelling enemies. Even so, colonizers were more interested in easier-to-reach areas with more resources, so the Etas remote locations didn't get as much.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's actually videos, and I believe these appear to be the same people that, you remember the movie from Hebrews to Negroes. Yeah. There were some so-called Black Aboriginals of the South Pacific, and they were singing Shema.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, these look like those same people. I mean, I don't understand, and I'm not saying I know 100% that that's Israel, but it's eyebrow raising. Now, doesn't our culture has rubbed off on people throughout the years, so it's no telling.
That's a good point. Yeah, I'm looking at these people. I'm like, okay, so this little cat right here he look Negro.
Right. Those are afros. Now, the first people we were looking at, their hair was more stringy, but it happens sometimes.
Yeah, indeed. I don't know. Let's continue here. Let's see.
Attention. These factors combined to help the Etas maintain their independence. And so the years went on and the Etas remained. The question is, How is this Black tribe doing in today's modern world? And how has human advancement affected their culture? Today, the Etas are working hard to preserve their unique culture in the face of modern pressures. Living in remote areas, many Etas rely on hunting, gathering, and small-scale farming for their sustenance, which helps preserve their way of life. The Etas are skilled with bows and arrows, just like other nomadic African tribes. They are known to be skilled fighters who can attack field workers or outsiders who intrude on their domain. To build shelter, they use sticks that have had the palm of banana leaves placed over them. Etas that have undergone modernization have left the mountainous terrain and migrated to villages and mountain-free regions. Members of the modern Eta tribe construct their dwellings out of bamboo, kogon grass, or even cement. They are known for constantly moving from place to place, which has given them a reputation for picking up the languages of their neighbors.
Nomadic.
Now, what's particularly daring about them is their art. A traditional form of visual art among the Etas is body scarification. They intentionally create wounds on areas like their back, arms, legs, hands, and abdomen. These wounds are then treated with fire, lime, and other substances to create scars. Another form of body modification is teeth chipping. The Dumagat, a subgroup of the Etas, use a file to shape their teeth during late puberty and later dye them black. The Etas also use various ornaments that reflect their subsistence lifestyle. For special occasions, they use flowers and leaves as earplugs. They frequently wear girdles, necklaces, and neckbands made from braided rattan, often decorated with wild pig bristles. Sadly, while these traditions are still observed, they are less prevalent today as the Etas adapt to modern influences and changes in their way of life. Currently, when it comes to religion, their beliefs vary, but are still usually quite distinct. Some Etas believe in one main god who oversees other spirits or gods. For example, the Aeta people living near Mount Pinatubo worship a deity called Apona. The Aetas are also animists, meaning they believe in spirits that live in nature. They believe that these spirits inhabit places like rivers, seas, mountains, and valleys. Traditionally, Aetas don't need special events to pray. They often connect their prayers to their daily activities. For example, they perform dances before and after pig hunts and before gathering shellfish. The dances serve to ask for luck or show respect to the animals. Similarly, they do dances related to collecting honey. In the 1960s, American missionaries from the New Tribes Mission came to work with the Etas, teaching them about Christianity and providing education. As a result, many Etas in Zambales and Pampanga have become evangelical Christians. There are also some Jehovah's Witnesses among the Aeta people. Those are just a few of the many ways that they thrive, despite the dominance of the modern world. However, this does not mean that the Aetas are without their own struggles today.
Ang ano ko lang, yung mga ibang sinasakim yung lupa namin, pero hindi namin pwede, paglaban namin yan. Kasi dito kami lumaki hanggang sa nagkapamilya kami.
Gusto namin po sanang walang pumapasok na ibang taong nanggugulo sa amin.
Mining, deforestation, illegal logging, and slash and burn farming has caused the indigenous population in all parts of the Philippines to steadily decrease to the point where they only number in the thousands today. As wildlife and fish resources have declined, many Etas have been forced to adopt an alternative economic strategy. Instead of trading meat for rice, they now trade labor. Access to basic services like education and healthcare is limited in their remote areas, making it hard for them to improve their living conditions. Their traditional culture is at risk as modern influences pull younger generations away from their customs. They also struggle with legal challenges, as it can be difficult for them to protect their land rights and get the legal recognition they need. Socially, they often face discrimination, which makes it even harder to advocate for their rights. All these modern factors combined make it harder for the Etas to maintain their traditional way of life. Activists are worried that the future is bleak for the Etas and could be on the verge of disappearing. Thus, sharing this information with you all is our way of trying to prevent this from happening. By raising awareness and fostering understanding, we hope to encourage action that will protect the Etas and their unique culture. Personally, we believe that there are several approaches that could help the Etas thrive and endure. For starters, the Philippine government should implement and enforce tougher regulations to safeguard the Etas land from illegal activities. They need to make sure these rules are followed and that violators are held accountable. The country should also create new job opportunities for the Etas that match their traditional skills. This could include things like ecotourism or making handicrafts that they can sell. Improving access to education and healthcare is also very important. Better schools and health services would help the Etas gain new skills and stay healthy despite the changes around them. And most importantly, we need to make sure that the Etas have a say in decisions that affect their lives. They should be included in discussions and decisions about their land and resources. Raising awareness about their struggles and building support from activists, NGOs, and international groups can help bring more attention and resources to their cause. The Etas may be struggling now, but one thing's for sure. This is a resilient Black tribe of fighters who have endured centuries of challenges and continue to stand their ground. They will continue to work hard for their survival. Let's support their efforts and advocate for their rights so that their rich heritage and unique way of life can be preserved for generations to come. Thank you for staying.
All right. So I'm gathering from, as we learn more about these Black journals, that they're more Pan-African than anything else. And that makes sense because a lot of what they've shared, it's kind of Black in the terms of from Africa, but not necessarily to one, to one area. Like we focus on Israelites of our people, which is mainly the reason I was interested in this video, to see if these people were Israelites. After hearing that they deal with pigs on such a intimate level, I would venture to say no. And that could have been the case that maybe they just lost that way, scarring themselves. All of these things are against our tradition, against our instruction, our Torah. So it was interesting to hear they had, one. Some of them believed in one power, but and then they said he was over other powers. I was like, what? So interesting stuff. So we'll have to see what else we can find out about the Etas, Aeta tribe in the Philippines, in that area. So maybe it's more to them that we got to learn about, and not in just that 13-minute video. So you got anything on that, Art?
Well, no, not a lot. I know that there's if we look at the globe, there's what I like to call, or what I used to call, a black belt that stretches, all across the globe. Do I totally understand of, how people migrated, and how people got to different places? Nah, I don't. I know that there are people that fit prophecy in the scriptures. And we're currently living and walking it out. But this was a interesting video,
Yeah, indeed. Definitely something a little bit different than what we've traditionally seen. But like I said, I was interested in this to see if these were some of our people maybe in the Philippines. But let's jump to the next video. This is another Black Journals video, shocking truth about the Scottsboro boys, Unveiled. I remember some of the Scottsboro boys. I don't remember the details, but I'm sure he'll get into it. But let's get to it here. Here we go.
You certainly don't want to hear about the Scottsboro boys, do you? This could give you goosebumps and cold feet all day, just hearing about it. It's just crazy, unbelievable to hear. The extent to which the cruelty of white segregatory policies did literally waste away the precious lives and days of innocent blacks in those dark eras. It was indeed merciless. Even children were not spared. The lives of the Scottsboro boys were literally snatched away from them, so that they did nothing useful with the whole of their lives, seized and thrown into prison, in an age yet as tender and innocent as 12 years old, snatched away from their mother's warm embrace, stolen from their daddy's arms. Facing trials like grown men caught in a murderous crime, the Scottsboro boys would be carried back and forth year after year, from one court to another, until their hairs would turn gray. Yes, you heard correctly. The Scottsboro boys' case had continued in court until these young teens grew into old men in prison, doing nothing more with their lives, which leaves us with the very questions. Is it such a difficult thing to look through a simple case of social conflict and set the record straight? How could a case as fickle as some conflict between youngsters chew away more than 100 years? And what was the crime of those prosecuted, by the way? The case of the Scottsboro boys, which lasted more than 100 years, was the outcome of nothing other than a mere childish brawl between young teenagers. The affair of the Scottsboro boys was indeed so infamous that it helped spur the civil rights movement and inspired several prominent activists and organizers. To Kill a Mockingbird, the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by white author Harper Lee, is also loosely based on the case. On March the 25th, 1931, 9 African-American teenagers who were aboard a Southern Railroad freight train in northern Alabama in search of employment were involved in a racially charged fight which had broken out between them and some white passengers, after which they were accused of raping 2 white women. The original cases were tried in Scottsboro, Alabama. Only 4 of the young African-American men knew each other prior to the incident on the freight train, but as the trials drew increasing regional and national attention, they would become known as the Scottsboro Boys. Journey with us in this video as we unfold one of America's darkest chapters in its history of oppression, segregatory policies, and hateful denial of the black man, woman, and child. Before we continue, remember to offer support by hitting the thumb button, share this history with friends and families, and subscribe to stay tuned in. All right, let's get back on track. The Scottsboro boys' case was indeed evil, one which the United States may have pretended to prosecute, but the true motive was to seize yet another chance to destroy the lives of yet another black children. Olin Montgomery, one of the children arrested, who seemed to have made it through 5th grade and was the only defendant who could write at the time of their arrest, had once written in one of his letters, "I was on my way to Memphis on an oil tank by myself alone, and I was not worried with anyone until I got to Paint Rock, Alabama, and they just made a frame up on us boys just because they could." This had all begun when a young white male would step on the hand of one of the black boys in the train, Haywood Patterson. This would in turn lead to a heated argument between 6 white travelers on the train and the African Americans in it. The heated argument would reach a boiling point that did inevitably lead to a fight, which, in a quick moment as the rumble erupted, the black riders and white travelers would be locked in a power struggle. In the end, the black riders had overpowered the white travelers, forcing them all off the train. Enraged, the defeated white travelers would conjure a falsehood on the African Americans as usual. They would go to the nearby town in Alabama, where the train was scheduled to stop and file a complaint alleging assault. Upon the train's arrival in Paint Rock, Alabama, the sheriff assembled a mob consisting of white men. They seized and arrested all the African Americans who were on board. Eventually, they were able to narrow the case to 9 African American boys in the train, while the rest were freed. In addition, 2 white women, Victoria Price and Ruby Bates, who were also on the freight train at the time of the event, approached authorities and claimed they had been raped by the 9 boys after the white boys had been kicked off the train. By claiming they were rape victims, Victoria Price and Ruby Bates successfully shifted the focus away from their own troubled pasts, which included prostitution and pending charges of vagrancy and illegal sexual activity, as they had both been involved in a prostitution case in Tennessee. Both women were later taken to be examined by Dr. Robert Russell Bridges and Dr. Marvin Lynch, who were physicians in Tennessee, while the 9 boys were arrested and taken to the nearest jail, the local county seat in Scottsboro, Alabama, to await trial. News of the incident spread quickly like wildfire. The Jackson County Sentinel, printed that evening, decries the revolting crime. White outrage erupted over the allegations, and a lynch mob gathers at the Scottsboro jail, prompting the sheriff to call Alabama Governor Benjamin Meeks Miller. Governor Miller, in turn, calls in the National Guard to protect the jail and its prisoners. The 9 boys, Roy Wright, age 12, Haywood Patterson, age 18, Olin Montgomery, age 17, Clarence Norris, age 19, Willie Robertson, age 15, Andy Wright, age 19, Ozzie Powell, age 16, Eugene Williams, age 13, and Charlie Weems, age 20, had their lives altered and snatched away from them by one train drive. On March 30th, a grand jury indicted all 9 boys, and on April 6, 1931, Judge Alfred Eugene Hawkins tried the cases of 3 of the boys. On that day, a crowd of over 10,000 people crowded the court in the small town of Scottsboro, whose normal population was not more than 2,000. After a series of intense interrogations, the 3 boys, Clarence Norris and Charlie Weems, were convicted and sentenced to death. The judge and prosecutor wanted to speed the 9 trials to avoid intense violence, so the trial of the first 3 boys took a day and a half, and the rest took place one right after the other, making the entire trial last for 4 days. That same month, the boys were later transferred to Kilby Prison in Montgomery, Alabama, due to issues of overcrowding and safety concerns stemming from the highly publicized and racially charged nature of the case. Kilby Prison, a maximum security facility, provided tighter control and monitoring. The transfer also brought the defendants closer to the Alabama Court of Appeals, facilitating their ongoing legal battles. At Kilby Prison, the Scottsboro boys faced harsh conditions including overcrowding, poor sanitation, physical labor, and racial segregation. This would mark the beginning of a most lengthy and complex legal process. The 9 boys, being underage, had no idea on what it takes to handle a capital case. More so, they had received no competent counsel, so they were barely prepared for the task. They were provided with the services of 2 lawyers, Stephen Roddy, a real lawyer from Tennessee, who was there at the request of the friends of the boys' parents and was unfamiliar with Alabama's law, and the public defender, Milo Moody, a 69-year-old retired lawyer who had not practiced in years. After swift trials, with outrageous testimony from the accusers, Victoria Price and Ruby Bates, the all-white jury quickly convicted the boys and sentenced 8 of them to death by electric chair. According to the jury's order, they were scheduled to die on July 10, 1931, even after the report from the doctors who had examined the women claimed that no rape had occurred. The trial of the youngest of the boys, 12 years old Leroy Wright, ended in a hung jury, not because he was assumed innocent, but the judge granted him the mistrial because of his age. Despite the recommendation of the all-white jury, the judge favored life imprisonment rather than death. A mistrial was declared, and Leroy Wright remained in prison until 1937, awaiting the final verdict on his co-defendants. The proclamation of this verdict and sentence brought a storm of charges from outside the South, alleging a blatant miscarriage of justice that had occurred in Scottsboro. After a series of rallies and protests in Harlem, the Communist Party, the International Labor Defense, ILD, the legal wing of the American Communist Party, and other human rights organizations looked into the case of the boys, seeing its potential to galvanize public opinion against racism. Most of these organizations sent telegram texts to Alabama's governor, Benjamin Meeks Miller, stating that the young men had been framed and were victims of legal lynching. The International Labor Defense, ILD, spearheaded a national campaign to help free the 9 young men, including rallies, speeches, parades, and demonstrations. Letters streamed in from various people, communists and non-communists, white and black, protesting the guilty verdicts. In the heat of this, the ILD employed the services of attorneys George W. Chamley and Joseph Brodsky. Chamley moved for new trials for the defendants, while private investigations took place. It was at this junction that they discovered that Price and Bates had been prostitutes in Tennessee, who regularly serviced both black and white clients. Chamley, in an attempt to prove his point, provided Judge Hawkins' affidavit to that effect, but it was swept underneath the carpet and forbade them from reading it out in the court. The ILD launched a national effort to win support for the 9 boys. The defense team argued before the Alabama Supreme Court that their clients had not been given adequate representation and had insufficient time for counsel to prepare their cases. Also, they claimed that the juries had been intimidated by the crowd, and most crucially, that it was unconstitutional for blacks to have been excluded from the jury. That June, the court granted the boys a stay of execution pending an appeal to the Alabama Supreme Court. The teens would grow into men while enduring decades of courtroom trials, convictions, retrials, and incarceration, and the associated physical trauma and mental anguish, even after one of the women had admitted that they made up the rape claim to avoid getting in trouble with the police. And how many times have whites told falsehoods just for the sake of getting blacks killed? History has it that most of the worst mass killings and race riots ever to occur in American history were products of mere lies against blacks, falsehoods born of envy, hatred, and jealousy, callously told for no reason other than just to see the black man or woman down, hurt, and trodden on. Nothing more, nothing less. What happened to the Scottsboro boys was just another one of those scenarios. While awaiting trial, Clarence Norris, one of the blacks incarcerated, wrote,
"I am alone, out to myself. No one to say a kind word to me. Just listen to the other people away from me."
However, in March 1932, the Alabama Supreme Court, in a 6-1 voting, upheld the convictions of 7 of the defendants, granting Eugene Williams a new trial because he was still a minor at the time of his conviction. The court denied the defendants a new trial, citing that there was no contention from the defense that the alleged victim had consented to sexual intercourse, implying that the issue of consent was not disputed. The case was further appealed before the United States Supreme Court on October 10, 1932, with the International Labor Defense retaining the services of Walter Pollock, who represented the boys, and Thomas E. Knight, the Attorney General of Alabama, who represented the state. Pollock's duty was to contend that the defendants had been denied due process, firstly because of the mob atmosphere, secondly because of the wrongful appointment of attorneys and their inadequate performance at trial, and lastly, that African Americans were systematically excluded from jury duty, contrary to the 14th Amendment. On the other hand, Thomas E. Knight countered the fact that there had been a mob atmosphere at the trial, also maintaining that the trial was fair and representative. In an opinion by Associate Justice George Sutherland, he found the defendants to have been denied effective counsel. He delivered the majority opinion, stating that the defendants had been denied effective counsel.
The right to be heard would be, in many cases, of little avail if it did not comprehend the right to be heard by counsel. Even the intelligent and educated layman has small and sometimes no skill in the science of law,
says George Sutherland. Later in November 1932, the Supreme Court overturned the Alabama verdicts on the grounds that the defendants had not received adequate legal counsel in a capital case. This set an important legal precedent for enforcing the right of Black Americans to adequate counsel, and the case was then remanded to the lower courts. The Supreme Court did not criticize Attorney Milo Moody and Attorney Stephen Roddy for inadequate defense, recognizing that they had informed Judge Hawkins of insufficient time to prepare their cases. Instead, the Supreme Court identified the hastened trial proceedings as the primary issue. This conclusion did not find the Scottsboro boys innocent, but ruled that the procedures violated their rights due to the process under the 14th and 15th Amendments, and the Supreme Court sent the case back to Judge Hawkins for retrial. The second round of trials had begun in the Circuit Court in Decatur, Alabama, 50 miles west of Scottsboro, under Judge James Horton on the 27th of the month of March, the following year, 1933. Patterson's case was tried first, since it was regarded as more severe at the time. Haywood Patterson was accused of rape and assault, with the prosecution emphasizing these charges and relying heavily on testimony from his accusers, Victoria Price and Ruby Bates. The alleged victims, Victoria Price and Ruby Bates, had identified Patterson as one of the primary perpetrators, and this carried significant weight in the trial, although a proven falsehood. The prosecutors then presented him as a ringleader, emphasizing his alleged involvement to the jury. However, this narrative was contested by the defense, who highlighted inconsistencies in the accuser's accounts and the lack of concrete physical evidence. Despite these concerns, Judge Horton portrayed Patterson as a key defendant. His decision to try Patterson's case first reflected the prosecution's emphasis on his alleged involvement, setting the stage for a highly publicized and emotionally charged trial. But the defense attorney, Samuel Leibowitz, being well-equipped and fully prepared, raised concerns about necessary issues that had been ignored by the judge. He criticized how the jury selection process was racially biased. He pointed out that no African Americans were included in the jury pool, despite making up a significant portion of the local population. Leibowitz called the jury commissioner to testify and asked if there were any African Americans on the juror rolls. The commissioner replied affirmatively, but Leibowitz questioned the accuracy of this response, implying that African Americans were intentionally excluded. This exchange highlighted systemic racial discrimination in the legal system, particularly in jury selection. By challenging the commissioner's answer, Leibowitz cast doubt on the fairness of the trial and laid groundwork for future appeals. On April 6, 1933, one of the boys' accusers, Ruby Bates, would recant her initial testimony and agree to testify for the defense, acknowledging that she and Price had been pressured into falsely accusing the Scottsboro boys.
I told a lie. Those boys didn't touch me. I was scared and I told a lie.
According to her, she was with Victoria Price for the whole train ride. Her assertion that she and Price were with boyfriends the night before explains the presence of semen in their vaginas.
You have testified that you examined Victoria Price and Ruby Bates within a half hour of this alleged multiple rape.
On the stand, Dr. Bridges admits that the sperm found in his examination were non-motile and indicates that Victoria Price showed no physical signs of having been forcibly raped by that amount of men, as she claimed, but he refuses to say how old the semen could have been. Ruby Bates had obviously decided to tell the truth, as her conscience had begun to prick at her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had wronged the boys, who were innocent. The weight of her lie grew heavier with each passing day. After meeting with Joseph Brodsky, a Communist Party USA representative who was advocating for the Scottsboro boys' release, Ruby's eyes were open to the truth as he shared the boys' stories and struggles, and she summoned the courage to finally speak the truth. She realized that her false accusations had destroyed lives. The boys' families suffered, and the community was torn apart by racial tensions. Ruby's guilt had consumed her. Ruby's recantation sparked both praise and backlash. She faced death threats, harassment, and rejection from her family. But she stood firm, testifying on behalf of the Scottsboro boys and advocating for their release. But even with her revised testimony and evidence from the initial medical examination that refuted the rape charge, another all-white jury convicted the first defendant, Patterson, and recommended the death penalty on April 9, 1933, 3 days after Ruby Bates' testimony. Having reviewed the evidence and met privately with one of the medical examiners, Judge Horton suspended the death sentence and granted Patterson a new trial. This act of honesty would make him lose bid for re-election the following year. On October 20th, 1933, the boys' cases took a troubling turn when they were transferred from Judge James E. Horton's court to Judge William Callahan's court. This move raised concerns about potential bias, as Callahan was seen as more sympathetic to the prosecution. The following month, on November 20th, 7 of the defendants appeared before Judge Callahan, while the other 2 youngest defendants, Roy Wright and Eugene Williams, were transferred to juvenile court. By November and December that same year, the trials of Highwood Patterson and Clarence Norris unfolded. During Patterson's trial, Judge Callahan made a startling omission. He forgot to explain to the jury how to render a not guilty verdict. Fortunately, defense attorney Samuel Leibowitz intervened, reminding Callahan to provide the critical instruction. Despite this, Patterson was convicted and sentenced to death. The bias was even more apparent in Norris's trial. Judge Callahan neglected to ask the jury to consider mercy, a customary practice. The outcome was devastating. Norris was convicted and sentenced to death, while the trials of the other defendants were postponed, as tensions in the town were running too high to expect a just and impartial verdict. With prominent defense, attorney Samuel Leibowitz argued the case for the International Labor Defense, and the Alabama Supreme Court unanimously denied the defense's motion for new trials. As a result, the case advanced to a second hearing at the U.S. Supreme Court. On February 15, 1935, the Supreme Court revisited the Scottsboro boys case following heated arguments between attorneys Samuel Leibowitz, Walter H. Pollack, and Osmond Frankel regarding the composition of Jackson County jury rolls. Attorney Leibowitz presented compelling evidence demonstrating that African American names were deliberately removed from the jury rolls to circumvent allegations of racial bias. Notwithstanding this attempt, the Supreme Court ruled in Norris versus Alabama that the systematic exclusion of African Americans from the jury pool violated the defendant's right to a fair trial. The court then delivered its verdict, overturning the guilty verdicts and remanding the case back to the lower courts for further review, including Clarence Patterson's case, who was formerly given 75 years imprisonment. This second landmark decision in the Scottsboro boys case later helped integrate future juries across the nation. The verdict also lit up a glimmer of hope in the hearts of the wrongly accused young men. The justices ruled that Jackson County's systematic exclusion of African Americans from jury rolls denied the defendants a fair trial, a blatant violation of their constitutional rights. On January 24th, the year 1936, a dramatic and violent incident would occur during the transportation of one of the Scottsboro boys, Ozzie Powell, back to Birmingham jail. While in custody, Powell, through some means unknown, had laid his hand on a knife which he managed to conceal. However, in a desperate bid for freedom or revenge, he would slash the throat of Edgar Blaylock, the deputy who supervised his transportation, with the knife. Seizing control of the situation, Sheriff Jay Sandlin swiftly intervened, stopping the car and shooting Powell in the head. Both Blaylock and Powell received immediate medical attention and survived the ordeal, despite the severity of their injuries. Powell's injuries would leave him with significant brain damage and partial paralysis, permanently altering his life, while Blaylock would recover from his throat wounds. But the trauma of the incident lingered. Despite his condition, Powell still faced additional charges for attempted escape and assault, adding to his existing convictions. His injuries also rendered him ineligible for parole, ensuring his continued incarceration. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, and other civil rights groups joined the ILD that year to form the Scottsboro Defense Committee, which reorganized the defense effort for the next set of retrials. As the case returned to the lower courts, tensions ran high. The prosecutors retried Haywood Patterson, Clarence Norris, and several others. But this time, the outcomes were different. As at the year 1946, 4 of the Scottsboro boys, Ozzie Powell, Willie Robertson, Olin Montgomery, and Eugene Williams, were finally acquitted, their names cleared of the false accusations. However, others were not as fortunate. 5 defendants, Haywood Patterson, Clarence Norris, Andy Wright, Charles Weems, and Leroy Wright, would receive reduced sentences. Though no longer facing death sentences, they would languish still behind bars, their youth slipping away before their eyes. Years passed by, filled with relentless appeals and heartfelt petitions. The case of the Scottsboro boys would become a rallying cry for civil rights activists who would continue ardently to push for justice. The back and forth would not stop. Now this is the year 1947. The Alabama Board of Pardons and Paroles would review the case of the Scottsboro boys, citing the overwhelming evidence of racial bias and wrongful conviction found. This review, coupled with mounting public pressure and advocacy efforts, would pave the way for a significant development. And in 1943 and 1944, Alabama Governor Chauncey Sparks would grant parole to Haywood Patterson, Andy Wright, and Charles Weems, citing the overwhelming evidence of racial bias and wrongful conviction that had mounted since their initial trials. This landmark decision was made possible by relentless appeals and petitions from civil rights activists. However, 2 years onward, being 1948, Haywood Patterson, frustrated enough, would attempt to escape from prison, but he would be caught and arrested again. He would die shortly after, while still in prison. As a condition of their parole, Andy Wright and Charles Weems would be asked to leave Alabama at once, leaving behind loved ones and familiar surroundings. Fortunately for the duo, activist groups like the NAACP and the Scottsboro Defense Committee offered vital assistance, relocating them to new states, providing new identities, and helping them secure employment. 2 of the boys, Clarence Norris and Leroy Wright, would be denied parole due to their initial convictions for rape and assault, although this has been proven false long ago. The prosecution had deemed their crimes more severe, and the parole board deemed them higher risk candidates. Both boys would remain incarcerated, their freedom seemingly elusive. Despite the progress made in their case, they would be trapped behind bars, still being victims of a flawed justice system. The years would drag on, filled with endless days of monotony, hardship, and despair. Their hopes for release had been raised and dashed multiple times, leaving them emotionally drained. Frustrated by the slow pace of justice and overwhelmed by the prospect of spending more years behind bars, Clarence Norris reached a breaking point. Feeling hopeless and desperate, he would make the bold decision to escape from prison later that same year of 1948. That Haywood Patterson had died earlier after being rearrested trying to escape. In a daring move, Clarence Norris would successfully break free and navigate the treacherous path to freedom, avoiding the authorities who sought to reclaim him. Once safely settled in New York, he would assume a new identity and begin to rebuild his life, leaving the painful memories of his imprisonment behind. Leroy Wright, however, was not as fortunate. Left alone in the prison, he faced the harsh realities of solitary confinement, with isolation and loneliness taking a devastating toll on his mental and physical health. Wright kept a Bible with him at all times in jail. He needed whatever comfort he could find. In a letter to his mother, whom he had been snatched away from since he was a little teenager, he wrote,
"I am all lonely and thinking of you. I feel like I can eat some of your cooking, Mom."
With years of unjust imprisonment weakening his body and spirit, making him more susceptible to illness, the harsh realities of incarceration had taken a profound toll on Leroy Wright, leaving him physically frail, emotionally scarred, scared, and intensely struggling to reconcile with his youth. After finally being paroled in 1957, Leroy struggled to adapt to life outside prison walls, but the trauma and scars of his incarceration lingered. The psychological scars, too, ran deep. His post-release life was marked by hardship and struggle, ultimately culminating in his tragic passing in 1959, at an age far too young. In 1976, nearly 2 decades after the release of Leroy Wright, Clarence Norris would finally receive his long overdue pardon. Alabama Governor George Wallace, once a staunch segregationist, officially cleared Norris's name, acknowledging the state's grave injustice. In his pardon to the Alabama governor, George Wallace, Clarence Norris wrote,
"My name is Clarence Norris, one of the Scottsboro boys. I was arrested in Alabama in 1931 and sentenced to the electric chair 3 times. The governor commuted my sentence to life in prison. I was released on parole twice, once in 1944, and I broke my parole and went back to prison until I got out in 1946. I broke my parole again, and I have been free ever since. I want to know if Alabama still wants me."
With Norris's pardon, the heart-wrenching saga of the Scottsboro boys would finally draw to a close. The Scottsboro boys' legacy extends far beyond their individual struggles. Their case galvanized the civil rights movement, inspiring activists like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. to challenge systemic inequality. Today, their story stands as a poignant reminder of America's ongoing quest for true justice and equality. This would bring us to the end of yet another thought-provoking video segment. If you found this video informative and engaging, support our endeavor.
That was intense.
Come on.
That story. I thought I'd heard some about the Scottsboro boys before, but I certainly didn't get this in depth with their history, and it was a lot to process, a lot to consider, and a lot of injustice. And we should be used to injustice. Here's the thing: you never get used to injustice. You can never be used to injustice, because injustice is the epitome of evil. And to get used to injustice would be to get used to evil. And so that's why you can't get used to it. But this story here was egregious. And the fact that the brother, saw no alternative than to take a knife and slit the throat of his captor. I completely understand it, and I empathize with him. The fact that he had to go there, I empathize with him because he saw no reprieve, and I understand it 100%. It's a horrible situation to be in. Sentenced to death numerous times. So the thinking is that I'm gonna die. These people are gonna kill me. These people are not gonna kill me. These people are gonna murder me. And it's gonna be completely justified because wicked system says so. And I mean that's some next level crazy. And to have to deal with that and to have to live with that, and from teenagers into old men, I mean it is absolutely egregious. Man, powerful story, powerful historical account, and just to show us again that this is the reality that we have faced, and a lot of these circumstances in this case help to build uh, future cases, jury tampering and things of that nature, which he mentioned. But man, it's interesting stuff. It's very interesting stuff. Uh, it's terrible that it's so harsh, but it is what it is. Simply plain. I mean, it's not what I'm not saying that because it's okay. I'm saying that because it's a horrible situation, and this is captivity. This is what it is to be in captivity. And even though this happened some time ago, this is no different from today. This can happen to this has happened. We got people in prison. We just had a brother put to death a few weeks ago, who most likely was I wasn't there, so I can't say unequivocally. Most likely the brother was innocent. They had no real evidence against him, but yet they killed him, and he's dead, and he'll probably be acquitted now that he's dead. So they'll find a way to acquit him, and but guess what they can't do? They can't bring him back. So I'll rest there. Go ahead,
Khan, I concur with all that you've said. This is what it is to be in captivity. It's so easy for us to find stories like this throughout our people's plight here in America. What's more difficult, and would say you wouldn't be able to find it, is a moment where our people just lived in peace here. And, our peace is parallel to our safety, right. So many horrible situations that we read, and this system is designed, the system is doing what the system is set up to do.
Right.
And that is to keep us below and keep them not guilty. On another note, it's a lot of these systems that continue to have our people in bondage. And I'll tell you what I mean. I'm watching the news the other day, and the state is opening up medical marijuana. So you have all of these cannabis farmers and businessmen, really what they are. They're lining up for to be able to open up shops and stores here in Kentucky, and they're talking to the news broadcaster with coffee mugs, and they're talking like they're Fortune 500 companies, and you know, they might not be Fortune 500 companies, but they've been very successful for selling weed. Something that you've got my brother still locked up for.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yep. Indeed.
It's upsetting, guy. It's upsetting, and it's celebrated. And I don't know what's wrong with us. I don't know what's wrong with us. Why haven't we raised up?
We've been given the illusion of inclusion, and that illusion is grand, because you got our people who advocate for the oppressor, and not necessarily even consider themselves a Sambo or any other sort. They'll just think that they just my fellow American, and without even understanding that that's straight up folly. That's straight up folly. But that's the sad reality that we live in, and that's why I say welcome to captivity, because this is the reality of what captivity is. Captivity doesn't mean that you got to be beat down or in the cotton field picking or whatever the case. Captivity can mean you working a 9-to-5 job that you paying your rent or your mortgage, and this is still captivity. Until your people are in rulership, you are in captivity. Until your people run things and have your best interests at heart, you are in captivity. So we are in a perpetual, continual state of captivity, regardless of the fact that I can walk outside of my door and sit on my porch, or go down to the store and pick up something that I want, or go to the mall and buy some new clothes. The fact that the rulership of this place is not my best interest, that means that I'm in captivity. So our people are captive all over this earth, because where are we in rulership? Number one, where they're keeping the Torah and teaching our people to walk in the way of righteousness, so that we can be in good standing with our power. Number one. Number two, where the interest of the people is is in our favor. Find me one place with both of these, and that place would not be captivity. But you can't find it because it does not exist.
It
does not exist. Even if you go to a place where the police don't harass you, you're still in captivity. Because at the end of the day, if the interests of the people is not the same as yours, it's not in your interest, then that's what captivity is. So we've been captive so long, we don't think about these things. We just think that, this is just the way the country is, the way the world works. No, this is captivity, and it's oppressive. So, all right, another heartfelt video, and another heavy-hearted situation to deal with. I just laugh sometimes, just because it's. I think if I don't laugh sometimes, if I don't find a way to laugh, I shudder at what could happen if I don't just find a way to laugh. To just put on a smile, not a fake smile, not a smile for the sake of to show I'm going along or I'm getting along, but just a smile for myself, so that I don't get so cold and so callous that I'm just say forget it, ain't nothing worth it, and just who knows what. But all praises to the Abba. I always got the promise of Devarim chapter 30, and the restoration of the children of Israel. And that's what I hold on to. And that's what I put my stock in. That one day restoration is going to come and the Mashiach is going to open up that sky and he's going to come down and everything is going to be all right. So, like that old Baptist preacher, everything is going to be all right. That's what we wait for. All right, we're going to go ahead and close this on out. The book of Ecclesiastes, chapter number 12 and verse number 13. If you want to be on the right side of the return of Hamashiach, of the Messiah, and you are Israel, this is what you better do. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear the Most High and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. At the end of the day, when it is all said and done, all the dust is settled and all the smoke is cleared, we will be judged on whether we have feared the Most High and kept his commandments. Why? Because this is the whole duty of man. I cannot state how important, how vital, how detrimental it is for you to understand that in the midst of everything that we've gone through, everything that we've been through, from the Scottsboro boys to the Little Rock Nine to whatever situation, circumstance you want to deal with, the boys from the Gina Six, Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Jordan, what was Jordan's last name? Young boy who got shot by the white dude for loud music.
I forget that one.
Oh man, yeah, I forgot his name too. Jordan, first name was Jordan, last name I can't remember, but we're gonna correct that. I'm gonna have that on the next video. Whatever the situation, understand that despite all of that, in the conclusion of the whole matter, you have to keep fear the Most High and keep his commandments, because this is the entire reason that we have gone through all that we have gone through. If we had feared the Most High and kept his commandments, we wouldn't be in this position. But we did not. And so, therefore, we are subject to other nations and being in their kingdom and having to deal with their ways. And it absolutely sucks. So, with that, I give all praises, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahuwah, Bahashem, Yahushua HaMashiach, and to the 12 tribes of Israel who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I say shalom, wa baruchim, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day that the Most High brings us back together and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High Power, under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone. And our enemies, our adversaries, and those who hate us under our feet. Until that day come, Shabbat Shalom, family.
Shabbat Shalom, Mr. Pekah.
All praises to the Abba. Hallelujah. Praise